The certified letter from the State Board of Nursing arrived on a Tuesday morning, threatening immediate suspension of my registered nurse license for elder financial abuse and grand larceny. When the investigator looked me in the eye and said my own parents had filed the formal complaint alleging I manipulated my dying grandmother into signing over her $3.5 million estate, my blood ran cold. They claimed I exploited my access as Grandma Evelyn's primary caregiver to rewrite her will on her hospice bed. What my mother and father didn't realize was that every medical chart, every legal consultation, and every dollar Grandma ever transferred had been meticulously documented on official hospital systems and reviewed by independent attorneys. They thought reporting me would force a settlement and hand them the millions. Instead, their bogus report triggered an audit that exposed the dark secret they had been hiding for 6 years. Welcome back to BT Revenge Tales. Make sure to subscribe and hit the bell so you never miss another story of sweet, calculated payback. My name is Chloe Davies, and I'm a 31-year-old registered nurse specializing in intensive care and hospice support. For 3 long years, my life was an endless loop of grueling 12-hour hospital shifts followed by direct, hands-on care for my grandmother, Evelyn. When a severe stroke left her partially paralyzed at 79, she needed round-the-clock medical attention, physical therapy, and careful medication management. I moved straight into her spare bedroom without hesitation. During those 3 agonizing years, my parents, Richard and Vanessa, were complete ghosts. They lived barely 20 minutes away in a gated community, yet they visited less than 3 times a year, only showing up on holidays to complain about the smell of rubbing alcohol and medical supplies. Whenever I begged my father for help covering Grandma's specialized physical therapy, he scoffed and claimed his money was tied up in investments. When Grandma Evelyn passed away peacefully in her sleep holding my hand, my heart broke. But 2 weeks later, her estate attorney called us in. Her entire $3.5 million estate was left solely to me. The silence in the attorney's conference room lasted only 3 seconds before my mother exploded. Vanessa stood up, violently shoved her chair back, and shrieked that the will was an absolute forgery. Richard slammed both fists onto the mahogany table, demanding to know what sick game was being played with his rightful money. That very evening, they ambushed me at my apartment. Richard pounded on my front door so hard that neighbors peered out into the hallway. When I finally opened it, my mother shoved a manila folder straight into my chest, demanding I sign an immediate quitclaim deed transferring the entire $3.5 million estate into their names. She screamed that the money was theirs by birthright and called me a scheming, opportunistic parasite who took advantage of a senile old woman. When I flatly refused to hand over Grandma Evelyn's life savings, Richard's face turned deep crimson. He leaned in, pointed a finger between my eyes, and made his final threat. Sign the papers, or he'd destroy my nursing license forever. 4 days later, my father's vicious promise became reality. The moment I clocked into the hospital for my morning shift, security intercepted me and marched me directly to the executive boardroom. Inside sat Marcus Vance, a senior investigator from the State Board of Nursing, flanked by our hospital's legal counsel and risk management director. The tension in the room was suffocating. Vance slid a thick, 50-page complaint file across the mahogany table. My own parents had submitted signed, sworn affidavits accusing me of gross professional misconduct and predatory financial exploitation. They claimed I utilized my medical access to administer unauthorized sedatives to Grandma Evelyn, systematically clouding her judgment, so I could coerce her into rewriting her will on her deathbed. They painted me as a cold-blooded abuser who isolated a helpless elder to rob the family blind. The board had initiated an emergency suspension hearing, demanding I surrender my nursing credentials immediately. The hospital placed me on unpaid administrative leave on the spot. But as Vance laid out the catastrophic charges meant to destroy my entire life, I did not break. Grandma Evelyn had spent decades running corporate departments. She had anticipated this exact betrayal and left me a bulletproof defense. I opened my briefcase, placed 2 thick medical binders onto the table, and handed investigator Vance a flash drive. The first binder contained comprehensive neurological evaluations and cognitive assessments conducted every 6 months by Dr. Eris Thorne, an independent, board-certified neurologist unconnected to my hospital. The final exam, dated just 3 weeks prior to Evelyn's passing, confirmed perfect cognitive function and absolute legal competency. Next, I walked the investigator through every daily medication log, showing that all prescriptions had been ordered by her primary physician, fulfilled by a third-party pharmacy, and verified by visiting state hospice nurses. Then, I played the video file on the boardroom monitor. Grandma Evelyn appeared on screen beside her attorney, 2 independent witnesses, and a court-certified videographer. Looking straight into the lens, she declared with razor-sharp clarity that she was deliberately disinheriting Richard and Vanessa for years of calculated neglect, emotional abandonment, and financial betrayal. She explicitly affirmed leaving the entire $3.5 million estate to me as an uncoerced gift of gratitude. Investigator Vance closed his notepad, shook his head in disgust at the fabricated complaint, and dismissed all charges against my license with prejudice on the spot. Clearing my name was only the beginning of their nightmare. Because Richard and Vanessa had filed a sworn formal complaint alleging felony-level elder financial abuse against a licensed medical professional, the state regulatory body was legally mandated to trigger an exhaustive forensic audit through the state attorney general's Elder Protection Division. A state forensic accountant was assigned to comb through every single transaction across Grandma Evelyn's banking records, tax filings, and investment portfolios dating back 10 full years. Within 2 weeks, the audit team uncovered a staggering trail of deliberate theft. 6 years prior, when Evelyn had suffered her first minor health scare, my parents had briefly secured a temporary medical power of attorney. The financial records proved that during that 8-month window, Richard and Vanessa systematically drained $418,000 from Grandma Evelyn's primary savings into a private shell company controlled solely by my father. They had falsified ledger entries, convinced she would never notice the missing funds. But Evelyn had discovered their grand larceny years ago. Rather than having her own son arrested back then, she quietly revoked their authority, rewrote her will, and entrusted her entire estate solely to me. Armed with the official state forensic audit, my estate attorney immediately filed a civil lawsuit against Richard and Vanessa for elder financial conversion, fraud, and unlawful misappropriation, demanding full restitution of the stolen $418,000 plus statutory interest and punitive damages. At the exact same time, the State Board of Nursing formally referred their falsified complaint and bogus affidavits to the District Attorney's Office for criminal prosecution regarding perjury and filing fraudulent state instruments. When the sheriff's deputies served Richard and Vanessa with court summonses in the middle of their country club dining room, my mother suffered a complete, hysterical meltdown. Backed into a corner by incontrovertible bank records and looming criminal indictments, my parents were forced to sign a binding settlement agreement. To pay back every stolen penny to the estate along with my legal fees, Richard had to liquidate his commercial investments, auction off his luxury sports cars, and downsize their 4-bedroom home into a modest rental townhouse. I was fully reinstated at the hospital with formal apologies from the administration, but the ordeal changed me forever. I went completely no contact with Richard, Vanessa, and every relative who supported their toxic smear campaign. With the $3.5 million estate and recovered funds secured, I honored the woman who gave me everything. I established the Evelyn Davies Endowed Nursing Scholarship, fully covering tuition for students pursuing hospice care, along with a dedicated fund protecting seniors from predatory abuse. My parents tried to weaponize lies to steal what they never earned. In the end, truth dismantled their greed and cost them everything.